Hey everyone, I'm back with a brand new mom haircut, and welcome to the XAVIER chapter where I'm going to be talking about all things XAVIER, updates, how he's growing, things that he likes, dislikes, all of that as he grows. This video is going to be his birth story. So some of you may have already seen my birth video that I had a birth photographer and videographer do, or have read my blog, but I kind of wanted to just create a video for it as well, and let's get into it. So it was the wildest 12 hours of my entire life. I mean, obviously, you never really know what birth is going to be like with your first child, so I really just kind of kept my expectations low. My hope was that I could give birth at the Toronto Birth Centre. As much as I want to say it's because I wanted minimal medical interventions or because I wanted it to be completely midwife-led, honestly the main reason was so that I could have my birth photographer there. And that's just because during the pandemic, the hospitals were still only allowing one support person, whereas the birth center was allowing 3 at one point, but then after the wave that came right before I gave birth, they reduced it back down to 2, which was still one extra person more than the hospitals. When I came down to it, obviously I'm a photographer and I love making videos. Birth photography for me is my all-time favorite thing to do, and I've only gotten to do it twice, unfortunately. I missed out on a couple of births because of the pandemic, but it's honestly like the most raw and genuine that you will ever see someone. And I love capturing that type of emotion. So I knew for myself, I really wanted photography and videography. It was super high priority for me. I am someone that constantly goes back and looks at old photos and old videos and stuff like that. And I'm so glad that I did. It was the best money I ever spent. I went with Jen Inkle in Toronto. I will link her website down below. She was incredible. I had been having Braxton Hicks contractions on and off pretty much since like 20 weeks or so. And sometimes it would just be random tightening, and other times if I went like walking around a store for too long, it would make me feel like I was having some cramping or menstrual cramps. Other than that, I had no other signs of labor. Like I was still carrying very high. I don't think he ever really dropped. February 13th at 12:45, like 12:45. I woke up to go pee. I would often wake up multiple times to pee. So I woke up, went pee, went back to bed. And then as I was falling back asleep, I kind of flipped from my left side to my right side. And as I did that, I felt like a really loud, I say loud, but like I don't know if it was actually audible or if it just felt like it was audible because it was such a large popping sensation. It was like a pop clicking sensation. And I was like, that felt a little different because my pelvis had often been clicking and popping anytime I rolled over and moved anyways. So I wasn't sure if it was that or if it was something else. And then so I kind of lay there on my side for a minute, and then I started to feel a slight trickle, and I was like, I think it's go time. So I got up and I like waddled really as quickly as I could to the washroom because I was nervous that it was my water breaking. And as soon as I made it to the toilet, it was like Niagara Falls, not to get too graphic here, but there was definitely no question that my water had broke, which I'm kind of grateful for because I hear a lot of stories about some women getting like just a consistent trickle over a long period of time, and they're not sure if it's just like regular bodily fluids or if it was their water breaking. And I'm glad that I really didn't have to deal with any of that. What is it? Is it this? Is it that? I knew for sure that it was go time. So I'm sitting there on the toilet and I had to call to Peter and wake him up, be like, Peter! And that was kind of, reality was setting in. And, there was still often times during my pregnancy where I would, even though I was in so much pain and stuff, I would like forget. And it like took me my whole pregnancy to really come to terms that I was pregnant and that this is gonna happen. I'm gonna become a mom, I'm gonna have a baby. And then suddenly the day was here and things were happening, and I was nervous, but I was like surprisingly calm about everything. And pretty much immediately after my water broke, I started getting contractions. And so I started timing them on this app I downloaded. And pretty much immediately from when they started, they were less than 5 minutes apart. So they were anywhere from like 4 to 5 minutes. And then very quickly they moved from like 2 to 5 minutes. So the frequency of them and how close they were together kind of scared me a little bit. I know labor can last hours and hours and hours, and often they can be quite far apart. And typically the time that you would go to the hospital is when the contractions are like 3 to 5 minutes apart, lasting for a minute long, and are painful. So mine were already within that time range. They weren't super painful yet. They were just like a little uncomfortable, and they were lasting between 30 and 45 seconds long in the beginning. I let an hour go by, and then I decided to text my birth photographer and call my midwife. So we chatted for a bit, and then she told me to give her a call back. She wasn't too concerned about the spacing between them, but to call her back when they started getting more painful. I let another hour go by, so it was like 3 o'clock, and then I called her back because pretty much after I hung up the phone with her the first time, they started very quickly getting more painful and closer together. So I called her back, and at this point I was having a hard time kind of talking through them. She wanted me to wait just a little bit longer, and so I was like, okay. I don't know, something in me just told me I needed to go, and like literally 20 minutes later I called her back and I was like, listen, I would feel a lot more comfortable if I left now, because also the birthing center was 30 minutes away as opposed to the hospitals that were like 15 minutes from our house, and it was downtown, so like I wasn't sure how complicated parking situation was going to be and everything. I didn't want to be that person that has a baby in the car. That was like my biggest fear. So she said, okay, I'll meet you there. And later on, she actually told me, she's like, I had a feeling after your second call that I would be hearing back from you very soon. And I was like, okay, because like I don't want to be that annoying patient, but I'm also going to advocate for myself. That being said, like this is my first. They always tell you, oh, your first labors are often quite long, and then subsequent labors after that with other kids are usually shorter. I also had no idea how dilated or effaced I was up to that point, because with midwives, they're very minimal intervention, and unless I asked for it, they wouldn't check anyways. So, and I never asked for it, so I didn't know how far along I was. So by like 3:30, we left. And honestly, the drive was great. We were really lucky for being the middle of February. It was, I mean, a beautiful day. The weather was completely clear. There was like no cars on the road. The roads were completely clear and not slippery at all. And we got there in record time. I'm glad I went when I did, because if I had been in the car when my contractions were as bad as they were just shortly after, oh, that would have been that would have been hell, because I was already having a hard time. The only comfortable position for me, I mean, I say comfortable lightly, was standing up and leaning over and like bracing myself on something. I tried being on all fours on the bed. That hurt way more. I tried just sitting normal, and that hurt a lot more. So sitting in the car was hard. I read a lot about making kind of low, deep, kind of moaning noises to keep yourself centered and just kind of focusing inward. So I was really focused on that. We got there and we were the only ones there, which was super cool. I wish I had more time to take in the center itself, because by the time I got there, my eyes were pretty much closed 99% of the time, because it was easier for me to focus. And we got there, and I just really wanted to get checked like as soon as possible, but it did take me a little bit of time to like even get to the bed, because again, sitting hurt way more and I kept having to pause. Like from the get-go, I never had a moment to breathe because my contractions were just so close together so quickly. So like by the time I got there, they were already 1 to 2 minutes apart. It would be like walking in, have a contraction, stop, wait for it to end. And then it would end, and I would like take off my socks, and then another contraction, and I'd have to wait, and then I'd like take off my leggings, and then another contraction, and then I like waddle to the bed, and then before I can sit on the bed, I have another contraction. And so it took a while for me to actually get checked. When she checked me, she said, you are 9 centimeters. And the first thing out of my mouth was, Peter, call Jen. Call Jen. Because initially, when we called Jen telling her we were on our way to the birthing center, she said to let her know when I was 6 centimeters or above, and that's when she would come. So I was 9. I'm very glad I listened to my body. Shortly after that, I hopped into the tub that they had already been filling for me, and I labored in there for a bit. And honestly, like I wasn't in there very long before I was telling my midwife, I kind of feel like I need to push, but I can't tell. She said, if you push during contraction and it feels good, like feels better, I guess, like takes the edge off the contraction, then that means you're ready to push. If it hurts more, then that means it's not time. So I was skeptical that it would feel better in any capacity, but also my photographer wasn't there yet. After all of that, with photography being so important to me, the last thing I wanted was for her to miss it. So even though I felt like pushing, I felt like I was holding him inside me, like just bracing with everything in my body. And that was the most painful part of the labor, I guess, was that part when I was like trying not to push. And then when she finally came, I could finally start pushing. And shockingly, it did feel like, I can't say good. It didn't feel good. It felt better. And after a while of pushing, which I'll get to how long I pushed in a second, but after a while of pushing, I almost like didn't feel the pain of the contraction at all anymore. It was a different kind of pain, but it was way, way, way more manageable. So keep in mind, like giving birth at the birthing center means you are committing to no pain relief. They have some gas that you can take and like other kind of natural pain relief methods, but like there's no epidural option. And I mean, I think even if I went to the hospital, I don't think I could have gotten an epidural because I was already 9 centimeters and I very clearly moved to 10 very quickly after that. I don't think I would have had a choice of doing a natural birth anyways, even though that's what I had committed to. My midwife also said, she's like, during the contractions when you're pushing, I want you to try and remain completely silent and just focus everything into your bottom. And I was like, okay, we'll see. Because I was doing really good at just doing like the low moaning sounds. There was no screaming or anything, just very focused. So I pushed in the tub for a bit, and I was also shocked. I shocked myself again that I was able to stay pretty much entirely silent during the remaining part of my labor. So I ended up pushing for 4 hours. And that was because when she was checking his position, he had been head down since like 20 weeks, and he pretty much stayed that way. But his head, like they want him to be facing my spine, but his head was slightly tilted to like my right, I believe, which was making it difficult for him to descend. What this kid decided to do was take the scenic route, and he went all the way around, like 360'd it, until he was finally face down instead of just going Wah. So that's why I was pushing for 4 hours. And she also told me like my pelvis felt a bit tilted when I was trying to push in the tub. I tried pushing in the tub on all fours for a bit, and then I switched and tried pushing on, like, can't say my back, but I was leaning against the tub. And so she suggested I move to the bed, so that's what I did. And then I spent the next like 3 hours pushing on the bed. The time goes so fast. Like, you would think that when you're in so much pain that it would feel like it's taking forever and it would feel like it's never ending. But honestly, like in a weird way, it felt like time was flying by. Like it all went so fast that by the time I was in the car on my way home, I was like still in shock because I finally had him at 9:45 a.m. So I was in labor from 1 a.m. to 9:45 when he was born. And the worst part of the labor was the crowning. They call it the ring of fire, and that's exactly what it was. And I thought that I was like yelling during that part. It was very quick. It was like 30 seconds of that part when his head was coming out, and I thought I was yelling. But I look back at the video re-recorded, and I just started making like a little bit more sound. But I guess because I was so silent the whole time, to me I felt like I was screaming. But it was like really nothing. Everyone kept telling me like, whoa, I can't believe like how quiet you were. And I was like, oh, was I? I don't even know. I just completely checked out and zoned out. But the real worst part was actually not even the labor itself or the crowning or anything. It was the foot and leg cramps that I kept getting, which started in the tub with my right foot getting cramped up just because of the way that I was sitting and flexing my foot. But then near the end of labor and then after labor, I started getting like full on Charlie horses, like cramps all my whole leg, my whole calf, mostly because when I was on the bed, I was holding back my own legs for every contraction, and you don't even realize like how much of your muscles you're using in your arms to keep your legs back. I felt it like 2 days later. Like there were muscles on my body that I never knew I had that were sore. Like in my armpits were sore, and like my whole arms were just aching, and I could barely move them without wincing. Because for 4 hours I was just like flexed and pulling them back, right? Like every minute or two. And then during my resting times between contractions, I felt like I couldn't fully relax them, because if I did, then my feet would start sliding down the bed, and I was trying to keep them like upright. So eventually I had Peter hold on to at least like one of my ankles, and then the student midwife was holding onto one of my other ankles so I could like actually relax my legs, because my legs were cramping up so bad. And even when they were stitching me up after, because I did have several 2nd-degree tears, which I'm not surprised after pushing for so long. During that part I was getting tons of cramps too, so I kept having to like stick my legs straight out, and then the midwife was just like holding my leg by my ankle. It was just the funniest thing. But yeah, that moment when he was finally born, I like almost can't even remember it, because I went from being so focused to like suddenly having to open my eyes and look at what I just did, and I was like, I just didn't know how to react.
I'm gonna do a somersault there.
She's looking at you.
I know. He's got some tone there. Yeah. Baby prawn. Baby prawn. I'm gonna give you a shot. Mommy. He's fine. Oh. What do you think?
And yeah, everything was good with him, and he got checked out. They brought me some food and some snacks, and I was munching and making sure I got hydrated, and pretty much the only requirement before I could go home was to pee. So I tried to try a couple times, but like after you've been pushing for so long and pushing something so large out, suddenly when you're trying to do something as simple as pee and you're trying to use those same pushing sensations, like it doesn't feel like you're doing anything, or it doesn't feel like you're using the right muscles, and it's very strange. Even when birthing the placenta, they were telling me when to push, and when I had him on my chest, they were telling me when to push, and I was like, am I doing anything? Because I genuinely can't tell. And they were like, yep, you're doing fine. Yeah, so then finally I was able to go pee, and like next thing I knew, they were bringing up a wheelchair next to my bed, and like I hadn't even had a chance to like call my family yet. So I was like, oh, can I just make some like really quick video calls? So I had to call like my siblings and my parents and my best friends and be like, hey, check this out, I had a baby. And then yeah, they wheeled us down back to our car, and we were home by 1 p.m. So from when my water broke and everything started to when we were home with Xavier was 12 hours. And literally, like, we were in the car with him, and I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe we're just being sent home already, and we have to, like, keep this tiny human alive. Because typically in hospitals, it'll keep you, like, at least a day. Like, you typically stay overnight at some point. And I knew that the stay at the birthing center would be less, but I didn't realize it would go that fast. It was, like, several hours after birth, but it just, again, it felt like just a flurry, because there were so many things happening, and so much to take in, and just so much emotion. And yeah, so that's my birth story. I cannot express how proud of myself I am, because really I was kind of testing myself. I didn't know what my pain tolerance was, and everyone, like the midwives and the student midwife and the photographer, have all told me like, whoa, your pain tolerance is wild, which I never really knew before, because I haven't really experienced anything super painful in my life. So I don't know, I like, and not to knock anyone that chooses pain relief or epidurals and stuff, like all the power to you. If I had been at the hospital and had the option, I might have chosen otherwise, because if I knew the option was there, then things might have been different. And that's why I was initially considering the hospital, was to have that option. I can't believe I did it. I look back and I still can't believe I did it, and I'm just proud of myself. And yeah, and Xavier is perfect. I wouldn't have had it any other way. It was wonderful. But I am nervous for our second kid, because as they say, subsequent labors typically go faster than the first. And mine was already pretty quick, and that was with 50% of it being pushing, just because his head was slightly tilted. So if I go into labor with my next one and their head is in the right position, I feel like that kid's gonna fly out of me. And I feel like as soon as my water breaks, I'm gonna go to the birth center. I will call my midwife in the car and be like, listen, I'm on my way. Because I'm not gonna have a baby on the highway, I swear. But yeah, so that's my birth story. And if you have any other questions about my experience with birth centers, or with an unmedicated birth, or with midwives in general, let me know. I'll answer them down below. I can't wait to make more videos about how Xavier is growing, and I'll see you next time. Bye.